What's up, welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Frankenstein, the new gothic drama film from Guillermo del Toro, out now on Netflix, of course, adapting the Mary Shelley Frankenstein novel, one of the all-time classics, and this film stars Oscar Isaac as Dr. Victor Frankenstein, Jacob Elordi as Frankenstein's monster, and Mia Goth as Lady Elizabeth. We also see Charles Dance as Victor Frankenstein's father. Christoph Waltz pops up as a benefactor of the Doctor. David Bradley, Lars Mikkelsen, some familiar faces round out the cast. And since that 1818 novel, Frankenstein, of course, has been adapted numerous times. I think despite all those direct adaptations and then various spin-offs. I think the one from the 30s is the most iconic, iteration of Frankenstein. But there's been so many other spin-offs and offshoots, and of course, furthermore, tons of inspiration in terms of what Frankenstein has meant to larger, horror storytelling, monster storytelling, and things of that nature. And Guillermo del Toro, someone who, of course, is no stranger to dealing in more occult subject matter, monster subject matter, but also even more of the dramatic themes of a story like Frankenstein, certainly something that's right at home with him. He's actually been advocating and talking about trying to make his own Frankenstein movie for many, many years at this point. And now Del Toro seems like he's at a place in his career where he has so much requisite clout, of course, coming off The Shape of Water, winning Best Picture, Nightmare Alley being nominated for Best Picture, Pinocchio being quite successful at Netflix. Now he's run it back with a pretty substantial budget from Netflix to do it all again. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein film is an enjoyable adaptation of a classic story. The production design, the costumes really jump out. The budget is noticeable. However, thematically, I don't know if there's too much under the surface of this story. It's more of a what you see is what you get. But I did really enjoy the film despite a pretty long runtime, despite more time being spent with Dr. Frankenstein and less with the monster. I think Oscar Isaac does a good job as Victor Frankenstein, and Jacob Elordi is able to communicate a lot with limited screen time and limited lines as the monster. Despite a long runtime, though, there are some moments of the script that I think could have used a lot more work for this to make more of an emotional impact than it ends up making. The structure of the film, I wasn't the biggest fan of, where we have the monster chasing the Doctor out in the Arctic somewhere where they encounter a Russian sailing vessel on its way to the North Pole, captained by Lars Mikkelsen's character. They encounter the Doctor, who's wounded himself, and he's fleeing the monster, and we see this, this set piece where the monster kills a lot of the sailors in his pursuit to, seek revenge against the Doctor. And while I did enjoy the set piece, and I like that they actually built, it built like a ship set, and the CGI landscape around it, like I think it worked fine. I just don't know if we necessarily needed to immediately do a narration, let's flash back and figure out how we all got here type structure. It's just a bit frustrating. And that is a change from the book. I mean, the book, I believe it's a series of letters that Frankenstein is sharing with the captain versus actually like physically being there with the captain. And then we learn it's going to be like a 2-chapter play type thing. And the first chapter is all about, the Doctor's POV. And we see a lot. And I think the weakest part about this is we spend a lot of time with young Victor as a young boy, learning about his daddy issues. His dad, played by Charles Dance, incredibly typecast in the role as a non-loving, non-supporting, but yet very wealthy father. They try and tell us how Victor is somehow, he was always creepy or obsessive, and that's why he wasn't as well liked by others, and his younger brother was the favorite son and things of that nature. I just don't know if that necessarily comes across well enough. It's a lot of showing, less telling to me. He comes across as a boy who was connected to his mom and then upset when his mom died and didn't have a loving dad. I think we could have did away with a lot of that, to be honest. I know that they're trying to set the seeds for the relationship that he has with his brother later on. I thought some of that was pretty thin, though. I like picking it up, though, when we see the Doctor Victor as an adult, now played by Oscar Isaac, and he's making this presentation to the Royal College, Academy of Sciences, something like that, in England. Ralph Ineson's the judge of the proceedings, and he does this kind of showy sham demonstration of his talents and what he's seeking in terms of trying to reanimate life from a dead body, and kind of playing on using electricity to show the reflexes of muscles and things like that to simulate someone kind of being alive when they no longer were. A broadly plausible type thing, of course, in an increasingly implausible fantasy story. I like the scene. And then you get the introduction of Christoph Waltz as this wealthy benefactor who also happens to be the uncle of Victor's brother's bride-to-be. And he liked the presentation and wants to fund Victor's pursuit of, this reanimation. And that brings us into the fold. We meet Mia Goth, who plays the fiance of Victor's brother, the nephew of Christoph Waltz, and we spend a lot of time in the tower that Waltz is able to supply for Victor. And the tower definitely comes across as quite CG. I think the rooms looked okay, but a lot of the bigger scenes definitely looked obviously pretty computer generated. It fits the gothic vibe fine, and I think the mood and the desaturation, I actually didn't mind how it visually appeared. But to me, the story just gets pretty heavy-handed after a while. I think the build up to Victor breathing life into the Frankenstein monster for the first time, I thought that was pretty cool. I liked how that went. But then from there, it's you just see everything coming a mile away. And I know part of this is the source material, but Victor being the true monster is the takeaway an hour before someone actually says it out loud in the movie, and how he treats the monster who doesn't know any better, is so innocent, right? Despite being so hideous and so slow on the uptake to learn things, apparently, right? Elordi, to his credit, I think does a lot of good stuff. Of course, covered in prosthetics, completely unrecognizable. But in terms of the mannerisms and the physical acting of the character, and then slowly but surely communicating, I think, a lot with his gestures, with his face, and the few lines he can speak as this character learns newer words and things like that, and how to express himself. I think he does a lot. And when the movie goes to Act 2 and we get to go to, the monster's perspective, as the monster has stormed into the ship and is now telling Victor and the captain his side of the story, it's oh, wow, okay, there's more here. And I really like that. I would have liked more time with this side. I think if we could have excised Victor's childhood scenes and given more time with the monster, I think the movie would have been better for it. Because to me, the biggest thing missing throughout all of the film is the relationship between the monster and Mia Goth, Lady Elizabeth. Lady Elizabeth has some kind of connection, some kind of pity and feeling towards the monster, and clearly seeing how Victor is mistreating him. And then that connection, that interest continues throughout the movie as they meet in a few other locations. But I just thought that it just wasn't developed enough for me. And I just would have liked a lot more time with that relationship. It just didn't. It felt kind of rushed, which is disappointing because it's a long movie that's spending a lot of time elsewhere that we didn't necessarily need to do personally. So I think it's just a miscalculation in terms of what character moments, what stuff needed more time. But I really adore. I think my favorite part of the movie, honestly, is when the monster has survived and escaped, and he's out on his own, and he meets this family with a small kind of homestead on the edge of a forest, not far from the tower of which he was birthed. And that's where he becomes the spirit of the forest, as he's coined, and he kind of takes care of the family anonymously, gathering wood for them and building structures and things, and while hiding out in one of their back rooms secretly. And he develops a relationship with David Bradley, who plays the family patriarch, this old man who is blind and thus cannot see what the monster looks like. And I thought David Bradley was really excellent and really affecting in this role. David Bradley, of course, long storied career, probably most famously known for as Argus Filch on Harry Potter, Walder Frey on Game of Thrones. You recognize his voice in this role. I thought he was really lovely. I really loved his scenes with the monster, because especially Elordi is able to emote a lot more at this point in the movie. I really love that stuff. But yeah, as I said, I just think the stuff with Lady Elizabeth needed more time to have more of an emotional wallop. You dislike Victor almost the entire time. The movie's very sympathetic to the monster, and which kind of lends itself to Del Toro's sensibilities and POV that we would associate with him. So it makes sense that it went this way. But it's a movie that doesn't really lend itself to a lot more interpretation because it so clearly tells you who to sympathize with and who to root against. And I think there's room for more nuance in a telling of Frankenstein. Not all of those tellings are like that, of course. But from someone like Guillermo del Toro, it just doesn't feel like the movie, again, rises up beyond what it shows you. So still like the movie. Again, I think it's a really excellent looking film. I think the acting is strong across the board. The production design, the budget is paramount, right? It's very flashy, portrayal of Frankenstein. It's cool. I just would have liked it to be just a little bit more. Like, it's not a transcendent film to me, but it's a good one. Let me know, though, what'd you think of Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein? What'd you like most about it? Do you think it'll be an Oscar contender? Odds are it's going to get a Best Picture nomination. It feels like this could be the strongest film that Netflix puts forth in the end. Of course, they have a handful in the mix here. Some below the line and craft nominations also would make some sense to predict, but in terms of victories, I'm not really sure if we can predict much at this point. Let me know, though, what do you think? Are you rooting for this film? Let me know. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.